Hello all. This video is for anyone who was not a part of the EOG meetings this week, and so those mostly consisted of classroom teachers. So if you're an interventionist, AIG, EC, ESL, all of you should be the ones sort of viewing this at this time. And so I'm going to give you an overview of the EOG presentation that each of our classroom teachers received so that you all have the same access and the same knowledge that they're working with. And also because, at Glenn, we have the all hands on deck mindset. It's not a particular pocket of people's problem, it's our shared collective opportunity. So here we go. And this slideshow will be attached to our the email that I'm going to send you as well. So all this should be viewable in real time as I'm discussing it. So if you want to pause me and look over, feel free. Okay. So on this very first slide, what you're going to find are hyperlinked documents for the priority standards, and all of this is based on the released EOGs. So I'm going to give you a visual example. So let's say third grade math, for example. You will see here every question on the released EOG. This is the way this works. On the side, you will see the colors blue, green, and yellow. The blue is for standards that have the highest number of questions. The green are for standards that have the next, and the yellow are for the next standards after that, the next highest. And so if they're white, that means we saw those questions connected to a particular standard the least. And then off to the side, you'll see the actual number of questions connected with that standard, how many of that number were calculated inactive versus active. And then at the bottom here, I took those priority standards, all those ones that were blue, green, or yellow, and wrote down every question connected with that standard. So these were the 4 questions connected with NF3. And what I did was I highlighted any repeated language that I saw. Then at the bottom here, you will see a direct link to Desmos, the online calculator used in the EOG, and how to work that. And then here, I also took those priority standards and hyperlinked a resource that directly connected to that priority standard. I did do a ton of vetting on these. The EOG language does not match up 100%, but I tried to find ones that at least some of the questions matched perfectly. So I guess what I'm saying is as you're looking at these, you're still piecing out questions that best match that language. And if you're going, okay, what language? Go back to here and look at some of those highlighted pieces. So that's all that is here on the top. You can find one for every grade and every subject. And then the EOG specs are the test specifications from the state. Okay. So this particular slide is all about question types. So for example, if I am a third grade student taking math, which specific types of questions will I see? Like drag and drop, multiple choice, text selection, numeric entry, constructive response, that sort of thing. And so this very top link shows you for each grade 3, 4, 5, and each test, reading, science, math, what specific question types you can expect. The other things that you'll see here is some of these are very hard to find and certainly hard to make. So for example, drag and drop, 4th grade, and I had discussions about that last year. Where can I find drag and drop that mirrors the type of drag and drop they're going to see on the EOG? And we really struggled to find some that were decent anyway. The state suggests SchoolNet. And SchoolNet is, you can find through NCED Cloud. It's like a little red school. And those questions you can find there are most like, not necessarily the question, but the type, like the technology enhanced piece is most like what they're going to see on the EOG. So if you're just worried about them getting exposure to that question type, that's the best place to go. So where here it says Horn's SchoolNet Overview, I've showed you how to access those and to filter to find those for kids to get exposure. Where you see here, technology enhanced question correlation. So what that does is take the way that the State Department would list a question type and converts it to the way that you're going to see it listed on SchoolNet. So let me give you an example. So for example, the state might call the specific question type numeric entry. That might be the question type. But SchoolNet, even though it's the same thing, will call it a gridded response. So this is just a conversion chart. So when you're filtering in SchoolNet, you'll know exactly what to list it as. So this one here, the training video, that's about a 55-minute webinar, basically on what I'm exactly telling you about. I watched it so that you didn't have to, and my video is about 5 minutes, whereas theirs is 55. But if you want to watch it, it's there. So that's that. And then the NC test tutorial, starting at minute 11:25, they're going to talk about the question types as well. However, it doesn't narrow it to which grade is going to experience which question type. So there's that. Good. Okay. So the ones that grades 3, 4, and 5 will definitely see either on the math or ELA will be multiple choice. Obviously, that one's pretty intuitive. Text select questions. So these ones are kind of funky dunky. What the kids will do is they will click on specific choices, like let's say I'm clicking on 10, and 10 will then drop down to the box that says selected. If they want 10 to come back, like they're like, it's not 10, they will re-click on the original number. So I would click 10 at the top again to retract the 10 from the bottom. Numerical entry is as it sounds, you enter a number. Text replacement, so the kids would click on, let's say I want to click on the word slow. If I click on that, it automatically replaces the word quick. And then drag and drop is how it sounds. So you would drag the word dog over to cannot fly and drop it. And then if you want to pull it back, you literally click on it again and pull down. So, excuse me. These are both for, think of them as what you would want a kid to do for any question on the EOG, or any question really for anything you do if you're doing a practice problem in your class as well. And so these are best practices for ELA and then best practices for math. And you would want your kids to know, hey, this is, if I forget everything, I know that this is my best steps to do with any particular problem. So these are our focus for ELA for just a second. So I'm trying to think how I want to show you this. Okay, so I'll show you like this. So one of the things that I've noticed is I'm still noticing a gap, and especially when I look at the CDA results and things like that. Some of them, especially for more abstract questions, the kids really need to work on focusing on attacking a question. So for example, like this is one I did in one of my small groups recently that really threw them off. It says, which supports the inference that most hives in the United States have only one female? And they kind of looked at me like, what? So I said, when you think about this question, what is the thing you're actually looking for? What is the thing you need to find evidence about? And they were like, well, I think it's the fact that we're looking for something that's an inference, and we're looking for something that has to do with one female. I said, that's exactly right. Highlight or focus on that. So we don't even need to read this story. If we look at the answer choices, we're going to focus on any one of them that gives me the idea of one. So then, like if you look at choice A, we got rid of that because that talked about the ideas of groups. That's completely opposite. B had the idea of being social. That's completely opposite to the idea of oneness. C had the word solitary, and we had talked about that actually that week quite a bit, what the word solitary means. And so they would go, oh, that connects to the idea of oneness. And I said, yeah, so let's leave C, let's make that a question mark. And then D, the language was weird, but they did see, well, this talks about how solitary bees can go to this group structure. And I said, that still has to do the idea with ultimately a group, though. So they said, get rid of that. And they kind of realized, again, I don't even have to read this story to know that if I'm doing good strategic, having a strategic understanding of what I'm being asked and what I'm being given, then I can do some really strong elimination. And so I asked them, once they had chosen their answer C, what specific words went back to the thing that they were most focused on? And that word solitary. So this is the kind of thing that I think we need to be doing with kids, especially on more abstract questions. Um, great. The other thing that I've noticed over the years is with questions like this, where the evidence is essentially the answer. Like they're not having to find anything. It's literally there. So they're not, all of it's there. But what I've noticed is when there's a question like this where the answer choices are direct quotes, sometimes they will look at the answers and because they have read the story, they will connect it to parts of the story, other parts of the story, I should say, because, like for instance, what a beautiful work of art, they cried, choice A. That might have been around the time where the character experienced success. And so they're thinking, oh, well, that was around that portion. But one of the things we need to teach kids is when you have answer choices given in quotes, treat it as if you have not read the story. Treat ones like this specifically like you have not read the story, because we have to see evidence of what we're being asked only in what they're giving us. So the only choice here where we actually see Antonio achieving success is D, where it says in a few years Antonio became known as one of the greatest sculptors in the world. We see him then in that choice achieving success. So have them be aware of that. Okay. I'm not going to flub back to the original slide, but one of the other things that I would just have them think about every time is before they're even searching for an answer, after they've read the question, having the kids have an instinct around asking themselves, is this find and search, or is this critical thinking / inference? I don't care what terminology you use, that I use find and search, critical thinking, because that's what I used all the time in my classroom. But I feel like if they do that, then they'll know, okay, this is either one that I need to go find the answer and pursue that, or all of it is going to be right here. I just have to put some puzzle pieces together with what they've immediately given me. So be mindful of that. And the last piece that I mentioned on slide 11 was this idea of still pursue joy even during the season of the EOG. So, for example, if I have an EOG passage or practice passage on bees, unless a kid's just abnormally interested in bees, they don't care. So find ways to include some background, even if you do just a day on, here's a video on bees, or here's a backup passage on bees, or something to ignite their curiosity. You'll get more bang for your buck. With that said, there will need to be a point where you'll do just a cold assessment on what you've been reviewing. But have a balance, is what I'm saying. Okay. So this particular page is places for you to find resources. So when you're thinking about your priority standards, where can you go? And so this is a listing. Let's say I'm going to, grade 5. This is a listing of those priority standards. And in each one of these folders, there are some resources of some passages with some questions that you can use. And I'm kind of going through the process of re-vetting what I did last year and just making sure it's still quality, or if I'd want to replace it with something better that I can find. Okay. And then this one is just general passages. I'm sorry, y'all. These were sent out at the beginning of the year, and it is what it sounds like. It's just a place that you can find any passage. There's not necessarily specific questions associated with this one. So very general. But you might be saying, well, when would I use this in? Let's say that you have a particular standard that you're working on, or a particular EOG passage that is kind of difficult for kids to be interested in. You might do a background passage for here, or you might pull a passage from here and create questions that match or mirror the ones on the EOG. So just there if you need it. Okay, math. So here we go. So one of the things that I have noticed as I've been doing some math tutoring this year, there's kind of two sets of kids, right? So there's the set of kids that just need exposure to keywords and what operations can be associated. And I know that's not the best practice, but it is part of the game. But the other is when you have your more advanced child who can use those keywords and find them really effectively, but sometimes they find the keyword, but they don't do some critical thinking around, okay, I've got more than one keyword here. Like, for example, I have shared equally, but I also have of. So then I've got something that connects to division and something that connects to multiplication. So in that case, you want the kid to do some common sense reasoning around what might be the most appropriate operation then. So this is a game where you would have the kids take some of the EOG questions, or any questions that you can find really, and have them take the number of the problem. So let's say this is problem number 1, and highlight the keywords that connect to the operation. So let's say they find the word, equally shared again. And so they highlight equally shared, and then number 1 would go in the division box. They'd put a number 1, and beside it, the words equally shared, because those were the clues. However, let's say you have a situation where the kid has a distraction keyword and an actual keyword. So like again, like number 3 here in this example, of and equally shared. You're going to have the kids write that number in both boxes and then put a star beside the one that they think is most appropriate based on their understanding of the whole problem. This is just some keywords and connections to those operations, just exactly because it supports that game. This is something that Miss Hamlin shared with me recently, and I just thought it was really kind of a neat hack. So if there's a situation where a child can understand, all right, the total is what is missing here. So I have a part and a part, but I'm missing the total. Then that will narrow down at least that this must be addition or multiplication. And a visual way of reminding them that is, if you notice here, addition has one part, 2 parts coming together to make one sign. Multiplication has 1 part, 2 parts coming together to make one sign. And so I just thought that was kind of a neat thing to show them. Okay. All right, moving on. So this is Desmos. We have talked about this as a school, so I'm not going to talk anymore. These are the, this is, of course, is the embedded EOG calculator. If you haven't gotten the spiel on that, these are 2 videos that I've created explaining what they are, what it is, and how to use it. Both of them very brief. These are math resources. So for example, let's say I'm in grade 3. I'm sorry. So here's some like for example, this one is just a general spiral resource, right? However, these are the folders that have these are the priority standards, and each one of them has something that you can use. Okay, science. So for like Miss Clark and Mr. M, I know you'll be doing some backup work with science probably. These were resources that were specifically created by coaches to reflect the EOG. And so I've been doing a lot of vetting of cruddy resources, but this one made the cut. And so one of them is just a Jeopardy based on the different units, and the other ones are vocab through Kahoot, quarter one, quarter two, and then Nearpod on heat transfer and weather. The Kahoots and the Nearpods were from Tracy Polino at Merrick Moore. Any of y'all know her? And Science Jeopardy is from a coach at Easley. Okay. We're coming to the end, guys. So, this is a brain dump that I'm asking teachers to do, but feel free to be a part of that. We want the kids to, when they get their scratch paper, and the test is like, okay, we're starting, go. What do we want them to know to immediately put on that paper? So like I'll use Mr. M for example. If he's supporting specifically 5th grade math, I don't know, whatever, I would want him to communicate with those teachers to go, what is your expectation around that for kids, so I can translate that to what I'm doing in this small group. Okay, this kind of goes along with awareness building with the children so that they don't have meltdowns the day of the test. So you could do this as like a laminated sheet on their desk. You could do this as an anchor chart, but reinforcing to the kids ways that they're ready. So you've had EOG ratings on your common assessments all year. All of that has reflected the EOG. Data binders and conversations, daily green lights on reflex and Lexia, things like that. All of that's very intuitive. And then lastly, this is just sort of a calendar of when we would like to do what, so that everybody is prepared as possible. This upcoming week, we want to do just an introduction to the EOG and start that awareness building. The next 2 weeks, focus on priority standards and then doing cold assessments on those. And then the next 2 weeks after that, we're spiraling all standards. So, all right, ask the questions you need to ask.